Hi there, Frank George here. As a doctor, I know a thing or two about probing. Indeed I do. I love something that's easy to install, easy to use, and backed by a real support team. And that's why I choose TH3D Easy ABL Kit for my 3D printers. I prefer not to waste countless hours trying to figure out how to connect things to my machine when I could be printing instead. With the TH3D Easy ABL, you get technical support, easy to use firmware, quality parts, amazing accuracy, and there's no moving parts. What are you waiting for? Head over to their site at easyabl.th3dstudio.com and get one today. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy printing. The Easy ABL kit is meant for 3D printer usage only, not for medical or rectal use.
What's up, everybody? Apparently my transitions aren't working. Anyways, what's up, everybody? It's Friday. Hope you guys are all having an awesome day. I see you guys are posting questions in the chat already, so go ahead and post them now. I do have some exciting updates. I have confirmation that Griffin has our new EasyBoard 2s in his hand and is sending them out to me today, which means I get to start testing them hopefully Monday or Tuesday to make sure the final revision is actually the final revision. Production time on them should only be about 2 weeks for the big production run. So we are very close. I also got messages that we're able to get STM processors, albeit at a slightly inflated price. We can still get chips. So I'm just curious because I want to know, like, how hard we should go into ordering these. You know, like, who's planning on picking up the new the V2? I don't know if we should order like 1,000 or we should order like 100 or 500. I should probably send out an email asking people if they're, you know, who's waiting on the EasyBoard V2, because, you know, we got to be smart with our funds here. We are all self-funded here. We actually don't have any loans or debt, so I try to operate within our restrictions, unlike our government that just likes to print money. But that's a discussion for another time. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, we're very close to getting them. I am going to be recording the LED lighting project for my projector screen. You guys told me you want to see it, so I got a buddy of mine coming over tonight. He's going to give me a hand. I'm going to put my Galaxy S21 Ultra on the on my little gimbal and have him record me fumbling around trying to get everything going. So I've got all my parts pre-printed. I've already got my LED controller, which I showed off on the last stream. I got a little, well, not little, but this is a 350 watt 12 volt meanwhile. We actually carry these in the store. I ordered it from our store and they delivered it to me today. So this will get mounted up in the, because I got a drop ceiling, there's ceiling joist. So this will get mounted up in the ceiling. There's a little cover here to keep fingers out of the terminals. And there's 4 screws. So this will be powering my lights. And I have a relay in the controller that will switch the mains power here to completely cut the power for the power supply. So when the lights are off, this isn't just sitting here idling, consuming power. There's one other thing I was going, oh, yeah, one little quick thing. When you when you guys make power supply changes, when you get new power supplies, they typically will come set to 230 volts. So you want to just take something and get in there. If you're in the US or Canada, move it down to the 115 position. I'm doing this now because I probably would have put this in the ceiling and wonder why it wasn't working. Because even I overlook that sometimes. So yeah, we will have full specs, high-res photos, and everything of the new boards once I have the production run in hand. We've had other companies, knock off our stuff when we've divulged, details about them. So, we've learned from those mistakes in the past, and we're, keeping that all hush-hush for right now. I have posted some teasers, but not a ton. So anyways, yeah, so the Easy boards or V2s are really close. We're using genuine STM processors. We're not using knockoffs, clones, copies, whatever you want to call it. I will not sell boards that have knockoff chips on them. So you can guarantee that they will be genuine processors. So no licensing issues and no other weird quirks to deal with. The new bootloader on the new board, and I did talk about this in the news update we posted, is much, much, much less pickier about what SD cards you use. We're using OpenBLT bootloader on there, and it is fantastic. So we're using the same bootloader on the V1 boards that the Smoothie boards use, which is one for LPC 1769s, and they were kind of finicky about certain cards, like certain larger cards just wouldn't read. But that's no longer an issue. I have tested, I shit you not, probably about 35 different cards, name brand, off brand, stuff that came with the printers, cards that I'm pretty sure are probably fake. Fake meaning they're not actually like what they say, like, oh, it's an 8 gig, but it's actually only a gig. I've not had a single card that won't flash, so that should make things a lot easier on people, so you're not having to have like a specific card to flash your firmware with on the new board. So trying to make the new board more user-friendly, more resilient against ID10T errors, just better overall. In my opinion, if you already have a V1 board and it's working, you're probably not going to gain much benefit going to the V2. That'll probably hurt my sales, but I'm just going to be honest with you guys. The V1 is a very powerful board still. This one will be faster and have more memory, but in terms of 3D printing, you're not going to go from a V1 to a V2 and be like, oh my god, my prints look so much better. I prefer to be honest with you guys. But anyways, any updates on the Ender 5 Dual Z kits? I am waiting on the machine parts to come in. I got pictures of them. They just got back from getting cut like a day or two ago. I gotta check. I was chatting with the guy who's doing it on Discord. But yeah, those are very close. I'm kicking around with the Ender 6 support for our EasyBoard V2s. The problem with the Ender 6 is, yes, you can put the board in there, but the way they have the wiring done, you have to move pins around. Otherwise, things don't work because they have like wires that are shared. It's not as easy as like, oh, you have an Ender 3, unplug everything and plug it into the board and update your firmware. It's a little more involved. I think what the plan will be is to just make a guide to go along, like a video guide, because I do want to put it in mine. The only problem is that because the stock SD card is on a ribbon and our EasyBoard doesn't have that ribbon on it, or the header for that ribbon, you won't have access to the SD card. So if you're printing with Octoprint, not really that big of a deal. You could always just leave the bottom of your printer off, and if you're updating the firmware, you just tilt the printer up and pop it in. So it's not a like direct throw it in and everything's going to be like the stock board. So that's one of my hesitations of getting the Ender 6, officially supported with our boards. So not that it can't work. It's just, it's not as easy. And I try to make stuff as easy as possible. And, if we put something out that, is a little more complicated with that, it could tarnish the reputation of the product, because people don't always read documentation. So there's that. Let me see. I forgot to turn the giveaway form on. That should be on in a second here. It says it's saving, and then we're gonna get into the questions here. So, all right. One other thing, if you guys, and it's funny that someone asked a question about our easy plugs and the firmware update, I literally just updated to 9.5 Tasmota. It is on the EasyPlug GitHub repository. I just did a release. I don't know. It was literally less than an hour ago, I think. Let me pull that up. I did make some changes, some usability changes too, as well, because the stock firmware, stock Tasmota firmware, it has like a section there to like update over the air, but the thing is it doesn't work correctly all the time. So I've removed that field, so you just have to provide it with your own bin file. But I'll show you here. So I have, if I can find the right switcher here. So yeah, here, 20 minutes ago. Wait, what is this? Why does this say, what the hell is this? Latest release 1. Oh, this must have been something that auto-compiled. Let's just go ahead and get rid of that. You can just ignore this. Wait. How do I delete a release? Am I, like, having a brain fart here? Oh, there it is. You gotta go on the actual thing. Alright. But what you want is the actual release here. EasyPlug 08 2721, and if you want to update, this is based on Tasmota 9.5. Here's a change log here. There's no separate firmware now for the Wemo emulation. It's just on by default. We got enough memory on that plug. Might as well just make it on by default. There's no reason to have it as a separate one. We had it as a separate one because I originally disabled it on the first release, and so might as well just have it on. So if you use it, use it. If you don't, you don't. But anyways, so yeah, you can go right from 851. I tested it on a plug here. You can go right from 851 to 950. You just have to make sure to flash the minimal file and then the normal bin file. So you can see here we've got, you know, like you've got a regular easy plug, not the power monitoring one, which is referred to as a plus. The process would be flash the minimal one first, and then it'll bring it back up, tell you that it's running a minimal firmware, and then you upload the full-size one. It's just due to space limitations on the ESP chip. So, but there are precompiled files for the regular Easy Plug and for the Plus for both of these. If you're not having any issues with your plug, you don't need to update it. The 851 release is a very stable release. I'm probably not going to update mine because they work. And it's one of those things where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's kind of like your printer. You know, it's not a device that's, you know, talking out to an internet service that needs security patches. These plugs are 100% locally controlled. So there are some limitations with that, like you can't do stuff like, you know, if this then that integration, or, you know, Google Home integration natively. You would have to have something in between the plug and those web services like Home Assistant, which is what I do, to use them with external services like that. But I'm all about having stuff local on my network. I don't like selling products that are, you know, tied to some cloud server that you have no idea what it's doing, what data it's harvesting, and these plugs don't do any of that. Once they leave here, I have no control over them. But yeah, so that's out. I'm going to jump into the questions now, and I think Mr. Ram Design is the first one. So he said he's got a max temp error / shutdown on one of his chyrons. He checked out the connection with next thing. I would check the resistance across the thermistors. Max temp errors are usually related to either the wires are touching or the thermistor failed and it's just a dead short, so it's just going to ground it out. I believe that's max. Yeah, it's max temp because as your thermistor changes in temperature, as it goes higher, the resistance gets lower. So if you close the two pins together, then you're going to get a 0 reading, which will then trigger the max temp. I do have on my list of things to do is a just quick, it'll probably be an easy tip video because it'll be that quick, of how to check your thermistors, how to check the resistance of your thermistors and the heater lines, so you can deduce if, hey, is my thermistor bad or is it good? Is my heater bad or is it good? It's pretty simple. You just, you know, at the very base level, take your multimeter for the thermistors, put it on a 200K setting. For the heaters, put it on a 20 ohm setting, and then just read across the two wires and see what you get. Your normal heater cartridges, if it's a 12 volt, I believe they clock in right around 3 to 4 ohms, and the 24s are around 14 ohms. And those are for 40 watt heater cartridges. If you have a lower wattage heater cartridge, like a 30 watt, the resistance will be slightly higher. If you have a 50 watt, it'll be slightly lower. And then the thermistors themselves should be right around depending on your ambient temperature, right around 80 to 100K of resistance. And if you put your hand on the block, make sure it's not hot or wasn't hot. As your hand heats up the block, the temperature should, or the resistance should change because it's changing in temperature. So, but yeah, that's the first thing I do. If I ever get any sort of temperature issues, I check the resistance on the wires. I'll also move them around. So like if I put my probe leads on and I see that the reading is correct or within spec, I'll then move around my wire harness while keeping the leads onto the pin or the plug, because if there's an intermittent short somewhere in the harness and it only presents itself when the printer has its head all the way over to the left or the right or the front or the back, or it's just intermittent connection because there's a break in the wires, then you can get inconsistent readings, and that number ideally should not move when you are reading it and moving the wires around. It should stay the same. If you Remo, enough, drop it, I'm not throwing it for you. I'm going to take this, drop it. There we go. We'll play with it later. Anyways, never fails. I think like 2 streams he hasn't grabbed a squeaky toy. But yeah, check out, suss out your wiring and see what your resistances are. Move stuff around. My Chiron's still here. I want to do a little upgrade tomorrow, like a little hangout, so I can get this in the print farm. I want to put an easy ABL on here and just kind of get it all buttoned up. And I want to also look at some like aftermarket hot end mounts. I already grabbed some upgrades for it from our store. I got our tough tube. I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to try to find a mount for it that takes the 50-15 fans, so I can get rid of the little dinky one. And then I'm changing out the stock 40 millimeter hot end fan because my bearings are already going out and this thing only has like 30 hours of printing on it. Shocker. So, and then I got an easy ABL kit in one of my drawers that is going in there. Claire, what are you doing? Why are you guys being weird? Oh dear God, there's so many snoots and ears. So anyways, yeah. So answered that one. Tesmoda update. Yes, it's there. You don't need to update it. TLDR, you don't need to update it. If it's working, leave it alone. The thing I remember with these plugs and many other plugs, if you have a failed firmware update and it doesn't come back up and go into a failsafe mode, because a lot of these devices, they do have a failsafe mode where they'll broadcast an SSID and you can connect in and try to recover with like a firmware flasher, like ESP or was it Node MCU Pi flasher can flash over IP if I'm correct. One of them supports IP flashing. But the thing is, they're sealed, and so you can't, if you have a bad flash or like your power goes out while you're flashing them, you don't really have any other options to bail it out versus a device that can be updated. It's like the only drawback of the plugs, in general, is that they're sealed. They're not usually screwed together. Why are they losing? Oh my God, hang on. They're losing their minds, and I'm the only one here, so, or I should be the only one here. Hang on. I am so sorry, guys. Ooh, they got yelled at. Yeah, there's no one here. They just heard something. Yay for IP cameras. So, anyways, where are we at? We're talking about not updating your firmware, unless you need to. I am unplugging my test plug here. All right. Sorry. This is the one I use for testing, and the reason I keep this one around for testing is so I can test the new releases, but also if I have a bad flash, I've opened this one up. I think, yeah, this is one that was sealed. You can get them open, but the problem is you'll probably mar up the surface. This one was one of the first ones, and I told them not to seal them up very well so I could pop them open. But there are TX and RX pins on the little module here. Let me see. So if you guys see here, do you see those? There's TX and RX pins. So you would have to, if you bail out a bad flash, you would have to get inside and then tack on some leads and program this with something like a FT232R programmer. So, but as long as you're close to your access point, and you're not having power issues, you should be fine updating your stuff. I can't remember last time, knock on wood, I can't remember last time I bricked a device doing a flash. So this one got flashed about 20 times today because I was testing going from the old version to the new one, making sure that worked, and then testing out the normal firmware on here and the plus firmware, because the plus and the regular plug are the same PCB and same processor. The difference is that on the plus there are more parts populated to do the power monitoring. So let's see. Dominic Versetto is asking, is Nylon 230 a legitimate filament? I'm not a nylon expert. I don't really print with nylon that much. ABS is something I deal with, but 230 is probably just a different formulation of it. There's a lot of different formulations of nylons. Just looking at nylon 230, that Tallman has that, so I would say, yeah, it's probably a legitimate nylon type. I do notice stuff like nylons, they do have like the, the number markers denoting like what their properties are. They're all nylons, but maybe some are more, flexible than others. Some are, more temp resistant than others, and they usually have those markings. Markings being the, the model number, so to speak, or identifying number. It's not like PLA and ABS and all these other ones where, you got all these manufacturers using whatever, add-on terms they want, like plus or pro or special or high temp. There's a lot of, there is some BS and inconsistency with filament namings for other materials, mainly PLA and ABS. And, like the problem is with those, and I've talked about this before, is, one company's PLA plus versus another company's PLA plus, they could be completely different, and one could be better quality than the other. A good comparison is, like stuff like we sell Coax. They're a US made filament company, and they use really high quality resins to make the plastic. Their entry level filament prints better than a lot of the overseas filaments that, have the plus, marking or marketing term. So yeah. Mike V got a Z Fold 3. I looked at the Z Folds. I'm still not sold on them. I'm sticking with my my candy bars. So, but anyways, let's see. What else do we have? We talked about the dual Z kits. I'm waiting on parts for those. All right, where are we at? Could I build an SD card extender into the board that would allow it to mount where we need it? You could find an SD card extender. The only thing I don't like about SD card extenders is they are in there all the time, and they tend to wear out the ejection mechanism on your board. So like that's my apprehension to using those. You could use I'm assuming when we're talking about the Ender 6 and the Easy board, and like I said, the SD slot would be inside, because the stock board, if you look at the stock Ender 6 board, it actually has solder pads for a slot, but they put a header on there instead, and there's an extension cable that goes to that. You could probably find a micro SD to SD extender and then just model up a little bracket to mount the full-size SD end in the stock location on the Ender 6, and then do that. But again, like, I'm not a big fan of the SD extenders because we've had quite a few people damage their slots on their Easy boards with the SD extensions because they don't always remember to push them in like a normal card where you would push it in to eject it. They'll just rip it out, which will then just ruin the slot. But then also just having that in there for an extended period of time, we're talking like people have had them in there for years, and then the ejection mechanism just doesn't work. I'm not a big fan of them. I do want to say give a shout. John Reefer Vermont gave me $10 for my coffee. I'm not a big coffee guy. I like coffee. I'm not a big coffee guy, but it will go into the caffeine fund, which is fitting because I do need to reorder some more MAW. I had paused my monthly subscription because I had too many, and now I'm only down to like one extra can. I also gave my brother, I think I gave him 1 or 2 little tubs of it because yay caffeine. Let's see here. Friggin' Nemo triggering Nightbot for the Angry Ducky shirt. Yeah, that code should still be working for our merch store. Our merch store is powered by Teespring. So I'm actually wearing one of our shirts right now. Most of my shirts are our own shirts. I gotta drink my own Kool-Aid, man. Mike V has like part of a question. He just says, you recommend solid mounts with easy ABL? I'm wondering if you're asking, do we recommend them? Yes, we do. If a printer can take them, I put them on there. If we put a easy ABL on there. Sadly, our solid bed mounts will not fit the stock bolts on these, because these are M5 bolts. So they're not officially supported. I'm contemplating just taking our solid mounts and drilling the aluminum spacer out a little bit so I can solid mount it. But as they come from us, they don't fit these, because the solid bed mounts we have are spec'd out to fit M3 and M4 screws, and these are M5s, so they're beefy boys. It's like just too small for the bolts to fit through. So I think the height will be fine. It's just the diameter of the bolts that come on the Chiron. Let's see. Mike Duche is asking, I've been following you in the updates you've done for the intersex. I was thinking about getting one. I was wondering how the stock board was holding up. So let's talk about that. So my stock board has been fine, knock on wood. But I have gotten comments on our videos. I've gotten emails from people where it seems like Creality is switching out the boards, either ones that you get directly from them, or if your stock board fails, the one they send you out is different from the original one that I have. And what it seems like they're doing, and I don't know if this is an isolated incident, but I've seen at least 6 different instances of it, so I'm going to mention it. It looks like they're not using Trinamics on the boards anymore. I don't know if they were having issues with them, but I had a couple people email us their whole conversation with their Creality wrap where their board was bad. They were having issues with lost steps, with drivers shutting off, and the board they sent them out was an Ender 6 board, which is the 431, and it did not have Trinamic drivers. And then when they told the Creality rep that this is not the right board because it doesn't have Trinamic drivers, they told them that it's an upgrade, and it's more reliable and more powerful than the original board. So I think it sounds like Creality's having issues with the Trinamic drivers on the Ender 6 board, which now segues into, why does Creality keep making different boards? Like, why can't you guys focus on one board for your printers? One board could cover almost every single one of their product lines. That's a single extruder printer. One board. It would simplify inventory for companies that, sell replacement parts and sell the printers. But Creality has, I don't know, I would say at least a dozen different boards out there that basically do the same thing. I can't imagine it's like cheaper for them to do that, because, think about it. If price of stuff goes down in volume, if you're making like 10 different boards that don't have the same processors or components, I mean, they don't use that many different processors. You basically have your 1284, your 2560, and some STM chips. But either way, if they centralize on like one board for their single extruder printers and one board for their dual extruder printers, which they don't really have that many dual extruder printers, they could probably get their costs down and simplify what boards people need for the printers. Because if you have a board that works in 20 different models, the only difference is the firmware. So why they do this, I have no idea. It makes no sense. Because like the 431 board that comes in the Ender 6 is pretty much identical to the 422 and the 427. And then right there, we've got the 422 and the 427. The difference between the 422 and the 427 is the driver footprint and what drivers come on it. But everything else is pretty much the same. All the connections, the processor, the board layout is basically identical. They just move some traces around when they put the different drivers in there that use a different package type. It doesn't make any sense. We design boards. I couldn't imagine doing a different board for every other printer that comes out, versus just standardizing on one board to cover all your models, and the only difference would be firmware then. Yeah, I have no idea. So Michael Valenti says, any firmware updates for the CRX happened recently? So our firmware, our Unified 2 firmware, when we release an update, that update applies to every single board and printer configuration we have, because they all are built on the same code. I have it kind of modular where the printer configs are separate and the core files are the same. So when I do updates to the core files, it just naturally applies to all the other printer variations. So anytime we release a firmware update, if you're using Unified 2, whether it's on a CRX or an Ender 3, or a Sidewinder X1 or whatever, all those models got the update at the same time. Makes my life easier instead of having to maintain a different branch for every single printer. Instead, I just maintain different configuration files, and then I have a script. It's a batch file that goes through and zips everything up and pulls the right config file for the right printer into the right zip file that we then post as a binary on our GitHub release page. So Steve Cook joined the Caffeine Fund, and he also asked, I have a friend that wants to replace the stepper on Ender 3 with LDOs. What does he need to look for, or is it as simple as if it fits, it works? So one thing is, I'm going to tell you, don't waste your money. He's probably thinking if he goes to 0.9 degree stepper motors that everything's going to look better. You're probably not going to notice a difference. Save your money. You can do it. They'll work if you just get NEMA 17 steppers that are the same, physical depth as the stock ones, or even a little longer, or a little shorter. I mean, most stepper motors you can swap them in and out. They're all pretty standard. What you want to look for is the type, like the form factor. So there's like NEMA 23, there's NEMA 17. Most of your 3D printers use NEMA 17s. The Ender 3 uses NEMA 17s. Now, if you go to a 0.9 degree step angle motor, which is what LDO's known for, is their 0.9 degree ones, and they make good motors. You're going to have to double your steps per millimeter on every single axis that you swap the motor out. So if you change it on your Z axis, you're going to now have to run an 800 step per millimeter setting on your Z instead of 400, which is the default. The X, I believe, is a 80. Yeah, the X and Y on the Ender 3 are 80 steps per millimeter. You're going to go to 160 on each of those. While theoretically you are getting more resolution because there's more steps available, because of the smaller step angle. So the 0.9 degree steppers move, each step is 0.9 degrees. So, you have 360 degrees, so it's 0.9 degrees. Your stock steppers are 1.8 degrees on the Creality printers. Now, like I said, in theory, yes, you are having higher resolution, but in practice, you're not going to know this difference, and you're just going to be causing your printer to work harder because it's running more steps per millimeter. It's also worth noting that in general, 0.9 degree stepper motors of the same size have less torque than 1.8 degree stepper motors. So you might actually introduce new issues where you start losing steps and have to up your VREF, which means the motors are also going to run hotter. So the TLDR is, I've played with 0.9 degree stepper motors on my printers. I could not tell the difference between prints, the same exact G code printed on the stock motors and the 0.9 degree motors. You're not going to see a difference, especially on a machine like the Ender 3. You're not going to notice the difference. So I would not waste the money on it. So Max CJ is talking about Tasmota 9.5. He says he's got 85 devices. You can say it's stable. Yeah, no, I didn't update the firmware because I thought 8.51 was unstable. I just updated it to update it because I knew people would ask. And it's funny that you asked today when I literally just decided on a whim to do the update. I have a mix of both devices here. I've got 8.5 devices and I've got 9.5. They all seem to work fine. But let's see here. Tim Jackson says, I've got an Ender 3 V2 hooked up to Octoprint. My problem is that it prints up to 63 millimeters high, and then it stops feeding filament, but it keeps acting like it is printing. I've checked everything. Sounds like you might have an overheating extruder driver. The Ender 3 V2s are known for their E drivers and I believe the Y drivers overheating on the stock boards. The 422 board is an okay board, but it's not up to Trinamic specifications in terms of the PCB layer count and copper count. So yeah, you're probably getting an overheating issue, and the driver's going to go into thermal protection to shut itself down to prevent damage. What you can try doing is take the bottom cover off and get some more airflow going on it just as a test. Rig something up MacGyver it and see if the issue goes away with additional cooling. There's been many posts on, Reddit and Facebook groups and even our Discord server where people have the Ender 3 V2, and on longer prints, towards the ends of those longer prints, the drivers will just start shutting down because there's not enough cooling. So we have an Ender 3 V2 on our printer farm. We're running the stock board, but we don't do that long of prints. Most of our prints are under 8 to 9 hours, and they're not that tall. I don't think the height has anything to do with it. I think it's just the length of time that the printer's been printing, giving it time to kind of soak the board with heat until it gets to a point where that driver is too hot and shuts down. Now, the 427 boards are, like I said earlier, they're basically the same as the 422s, but the difference is the 427s have trinamic drivers, but they're in a larger physical chip package, so they're actually able to dissipate the heat more efficiently, even though the board does not have a higher copper count on the layers. And I also noticed that on our later versions of the 427 boards we've been getting from Creality, they've been fitting larger heat sinks to them. So something tells me that they're aware that those chips run hot. Because why else would they be putting bigger heat sinks on? But the 427 boards don't seem to have the same issues as the 422s, mainly because they're using TMC 2225 drivers, which are a physically larger package. They're able to dissipate the heat a little bit better than the 2208s. But for all software purposes and features, the 2225s and the 2228 or 2208s are functionally the same. It's just a different physical package. I don't know why Creality is using the 2225s. I don't know. Let's see. What's the next one here? Is there any reason to install a higher wattage heater cartridge on a hot end? There are some applications. One, if you're just impatient, you want it to heat up quicker. I'll use the 50-watt heater cartridges on printers that have a higher flow nozzle setup, like the Volcano style blocks, where they're the longer melt zone. Those are a really good combination, especially when you want to start cranking up the feed rate. You can also put it in a standard hot end with a copper nozzle to get more flow rate without changing the whole hot end and heater block out. In general, most people are going to be fine with a 40-watt cartridge. We do carry both 40 and 50-watt cartridges. Most of my printers here have the 40-watt cartridges in them that either come with the printer, or when I have to do maintenance and replace one, I'll put a 40-watt on there unless it is unless it's got a Volcano setup. So like my CR10 here and Bertha, who you can't see out of frame, those both have 50-watt cartridges in them because I do utilize the extra heat output. Because the thing is, when you start pushing more filament through, it's going to use up more energy from that heater cartridge, and that extra 10 watts in that tiny little heater block does make a difference. So let's see here. JD says, I need to center my prints. When I change my offsets in the firmware, nothing changes. Any ideas? So if you're changing sensor offsets, that's not going to do anything. If you're changing home offsets, you have to clear your EEPROM between flashing, just like all the directions in our firmware say at the very end to reset your EEPROM. Because if you do not reset your EEPROM, it's not going to take effect with the new settings. So if you are using our Unified 2 firmware and using the home adjust setting, you have to change that, compile it, put it on the printer, and then reset your EEPROM. If you do not reset the EEPROM, then it's not going to work. If you do not put the values in a negative number, it also will not work. The offsets have to be negative. So let's see. I'm looking here. Chat jumped, so I'm trying to find my my position I was at. Oh man, it jumped quite a bit. Okay, there we go. All right. Where's the next question here? You guys might allow me to wrap up early, although we're already at 40 minutes in. That went back quick. TJ Dorman's asking, what type of filament do you suggest for making a battery box for an e-bike conversion? PLA, ABS, or something else? E-bikes, that's going to be outside. I'd probably do ABS and then get some sort of coating to seal the outside, just to keep water out. If you want to look at e-bike stuff, I believe Louis Rossman's done quite a few videos on e-bikes, and I think he even had one. He had some sketchy battery pack from this Chinese company that was selling like knockoffs, catch on fire. So be careful where you get your batteries from. But anything like that that'd be like outside, possibly getting, beat up, I'd probably go with ABS. Definitely not PLA. At a minimum, I'd probably say PETG, but I would do ABS if you can print ABS. John Vermont is asking about grounding issues on the Ender 5. I think my printer sometimes doesn't have a good ground. EasyABL gets affected. Is there a video I can watch? So if you look in our help center, there is a article about grounding. I'll pull that up. I don't have Jamie to pull it up, so I have to pull up my own. But there are videos there. Basically, you want to check that you have a proper ground from the PSU to your printer's chassis. So there's this link here. Let's see, that link there, and there's a video about grounding the bed. So there's an Ender 3 PSU ground fault fix that also applies to the Ender 5. It's a similar power supply. But there's also this one here where you can ground the gantry too. So if you have really bad grounding, you can also just add a little ground wire to go from the X gantry down to your printer's chassis. That will usually clear things up too. But if you have a bad ground, it's usually a result of the power supply itself not being properly grounded. The other thing that can happen is when they put that black powder coating over the chassis itself, it will insulate and prevent the screws from making contact to the PSU chassis and then passing that ground through the screw into the chassis itself. So what I've done sometimes, I'll take, I don't know, it's all the way over there. I'll take my Dremel with the little sanding wheel and just kind of where the screw heads go in, I'll just remove some of the black coating to expose the bare metal, and then I'll put the screw in. So, and a lot of that will be, will clear up your grounding issues almost instantly on most printers too. So let's see here. All right. Where are we at? All right, we're talking about grounding. How did I lose my position already? All right, there we go. John's grounding. Marcus says, when you do the Chiron stream to make it ready for the print firm, try and find a good way for the bed wires and share it. Mine's getting stuck on the aluminum extrusion. Okay, thanks for the heads up. I'll have to see. My first thing is I'll check Thingiverse and see if somebody already made something for the bed wires. But I am actually getting pretty proficient in Fusion, so I can whip something up quickly if need to. Probably like an arm sticking out. My plan is, because I actually found I've got 2 1-meter lengths of 10 gauge silicone. I'm going to use that on this printer. Like I said, going too big of a gauge isn't going to be bad. Going too small, which in my opinion, the stock wires they look like they're like 14 gauge. That is, I think that's too small. Like I think I looked it up and it was just barely within spec of the amp draw. But I think that those bed wires are probably choking that bed in terms of current. So I would expect that once I do the changeover, it'll probably heat up quicker once it's changed. Germicidal is asking, is Ender 6 really 3 times faster? No, it's not 3 times faster than like an Ender 3 or Ender 5. It does move faster. You can push it faster because it's a Core XY, but 3 times, 2 times, maybe, depending on your settings. I'd say it's slightly faster than Ender 3. I do like it. It is a nice machine if you want a budget Core XY. I think that would be the one I would recommend. Stay away from companies like Tronxy. We'll save this for later. Someone remind me before we wrap up to tell you the Tronxy story that just happened a couple days ago. They're pretty shady. So anyways, Mike Duche, what drivers are on our board? The EasyBoard V2 will have 2209s. You know, we're moving into the 21st century. Not really going to change anything, but we're going to have the bigger number on the new board. Nigel says he's got a VoxLab GD32. You got the clone chip like I did. What upgrade path do you suggest taking into account that I'm in Australia and freight is outrageous? I would probably just use that machine stock for a little bit. I know there was a guy, I think it's Alex, made a fork of the Gyres firmware, which Gyres is another guy that made one for the Ender 3 V2, and basically because FlashForge knocked off Creality's board, there's a lot of similarities between the two. I still haven't had time to play with mine to see what can be done with that board. I'm kind of just meh about it because the whole licensing stuff with those knockoff chips and the ST libraries, because it looks like even if you don't use the actual ST libraries, you're still using libmaple is the other environment you can compile with, and that seems to use ST's library, so it's still in violation. Yeah, I don't really want to touch it. And also, I thought that the Voxelab had Trinamic drivers on it because it's silent. Nope, they're Trinamic knockoff. So the Voxelab Aquila is using knockoff drivers and knockoff processors. So are they going to last? I don't know. The machine hasn't been out that long, but we'll see. It's a shame because a lot of other stuff on that printer was good. You know, like they used an actual Meanwhile power supply on it, and the build quality seemed to be good. But I think if you guys watch Tom's 3D, I think he hit the nail on the head with that printer. It's just another Ender 3 clone, except it's not any better than Ender 3. And I would have to agree with that. So, you know, it's not a terrible printer. It's just some sketchy choices to cut costs. So, David Lato is asking about Ender 5 Plus. He wants to put an easy board in. I have a Hemera extruder in one of my probes where my firmware supported. So you don't need any special firmware to run a Hemera or any other extruder. The only difference when you change out your extruder from your stock extruder is, one, do you need to reverse the motor direction? Because usually if you go from a non-geared extruder to a geared extruder, you have to reverse the motor direction. So our firmware has that in there. I think I'm getting deja vu because I feel like I covered this in the last stream too. So it's just settings changes. Steps per millimeter, and do you need to reverse your motor? And our firmware has settings for both of those. So yes, there's not a Hemera setting, but you just enter in the settings that work for your particular setup. So by default, our firmware setup, like if you tell you have an Ender 5 Plus, it's going to assume you have the stock extruder. So it'll tell the motor to run in the direction that works with the stock extruder. It'll use the steps per millimeter that work with the stock extruder. So if you change that out, you just have to flash the firmware, change the steps per millimeter. E3D should have a recommended starting point for steps per millimeter. Enter that in, do an E-step calibration. You know, if you tell the extruder to extrude and it retracts, then you just have to go in the firmware and turn the reverse extruder direction option on, and it's that simple. So the Guitar Man says intersex requires experimental setting for baby stepping. I wonder if that was a problem that Creality was having. I'm not sure, but I have I've been using that experimental setting on there. That setting's been in there for years. I don't know why I still call it experimental, and that's the where it's directly injecting the pulses and steps right. It's just bypassing all the command cues. And it works on every printer, so I just have it on. It's on every single one of our firmware. So if you're using our firmware, you've been using the experimental setting because it just works better. So I haven't had any stability issues with it. I don't know why they call it experimental still, but it's been in there for well over a year now at this point in Marlin in general. I think that was in Marlin 119. That's how long it's been in there. I could be wrong, but I feel like I remember seeing that in the configuration for Marlin 119, which was the older version just for 8-bit boards. Hybotix says, thanks so much for having these streams. As a new member of the 3D printer crowd, I appreciate TH3 in these streams. Get out while you can, man. Run. It's a pit. And all the other crabs are going to pull you back in the bucket when you try to leave. Anyways, hang on. I'm apparently talking a lot. All right, let's see. Wait. BW Electronics says, Creality quietly put out a video fixing the grounding. They said to scratch with an X-Acto knife, sanding or Dremel. Oh, it's almost like I know what I'm talking about. you know, so many people get pissed off at me because I say stuff that is the truth, but they don't want to hear it. I just don't care. All right. Man, we're almost out of time. That went down the wrong way. Hang on. Oh. Ah. That was a very melony cough. Let's see. Let's see. Where's the next question? I think, All right, what's the next one? Answered that. People talking about the 50-watt heaters. Yeah, I mean, the 50-watt heaters, you can put them in your printer. It's not going to hurt anything. It's one of those things where if you put it in, it's not going to hurt. Let's see. Ken Harris, how can you speed up the BL Touch probing on the Z-axis? It's really, really slow. XY speed is fine. So to fix that, you take the BL Touch off and you go put an Easy ABL on there, and that will speed up the Z probing speed. Let's see. Fernando, what's a good 3D printer for a school in a $1,500 to $2,000 range? That's a good question. 1,500. I mean, do you want to spend that much? I mean, basically, you're in like Lulzbot Ultimaker territory. You know, like the only higher end machine I have is the Daedalus here, which is a great machine. But that's in the $3,000 category. Yeah, I don't know. There's not too much. I want to kind of break into that market segment, to be honest. I just need more time to design a printer. But I mean, honestly, you basically got like your Ultimakers, your Lulzbots. You know, I'm not a big fan of either of those, but you do get support with them, which is important for schools. The other alternative would be something like a Prusa, like a fully built Prusa, not a kit. So, yeah. Let's see here. Does Octoprint still not work with the stock runout sensor? Swear it worked, updated the firmware, and now it doesn't. I believe you have to add the M75 to your starting G-code to get it to work over USB. I have a note here. Right here. M75 needed still? I haven't had time to test it, but I did write it down. Add M75 to the very... So you have your starting code and your slicer. Add M75 above all those and see if it works. I think it's still needed. I don't know because all my starting code has M75 in it. And if you use any starting code from us, we automatically put M75 in there because even if you don't have a runout sensor, it doesn't matter. But I use Octoprint with all of our machines here, whether they have a stock runout sensor or they have our runout sensor, and they all work. We did add it's a newer feature that Octoprint finally started integrating in like the last year or so called the action commands, where there's more communication between the firmware and Octoprint. And it does work really well. So if you updated to our latest firmware in like the last week or so, and you're using Octoprint, there is more communication between the printer and the Octoprint system happening. The one thing that is really nice with the action commands is when I pause the print from the printer screen and I'm printing over USB, Octoprint will actually pause because it received the pause command from the printer, which is nice. And you can also resume right from the printer screen. So, but we're getting close to the end. I'm going to see... I'm going to answer I'm going to put a cutoff here, and I'm going to answer our channel sponsor questions, and then we're going to wrap. I'm going to tell you about Tronxy, and then I'm going to wrap it up. And the doggos will get there. They're being good doggos. There's Claire passed out. Oh, he's like, is it time? Is it time, Dad? Nope, not yet. Still going to talk for a little while. Let's see. Doc Brown, can I expect any adverse effects going to a 4020 Sunon fan on the hot end fan? It's what I have and it's quiet. As long as you're pushing at least like 4 CFMs or higher, you shouldn't get any heat creep. If you go lower than that, which is the problem with some of the Noctuas, people put the 40 by 40 by 10, so 10 millimeters thick instead of 20 on there, and they get heat creep because those fans are so tiny and they're quiet. Well, they're quiet because they don't move much air. In general, regardless of what brand your fan is, if it moves more air, it's going to make more noise because air makes noise as it's passing through the fan blades. You know, or I should say as the fan blades push the air through it. So, let's see. I'm just checking to see if there's any more YouTube member questions. And then I'm going to go on a little mini rant here about Tronxy and them trying to get, they're trying to bribe, basically. I don't see any other questions from our YouTube members. So let's go into it. Let's go into it really quick. So, in full disclosure, I think Tronxy is a absolute garbage company. They've been violating the GPL for years. They've never made an attempt to comply. Their printers quality in general is just garbage. You know, you guess you get what you pay for. But where is it? Ying Wei sent a message to my my Facebook account that I use for like managing our business pages. I don't use Facebook personally. I just have an account for managing business stuff. She sent me a message just saying hello with a picture of one of their Tronxy units. It's like a $700 Tronxy. I would have to be absolutely drunk out of my mind to spend $800 on a Tronxy printer. Not happening. Strike one. So they want me to purchase the printer for $800. And then only after I give it a positive review, she specifically said she needs a good review, will they refund me the money, and they'll also give me $100 on top of that. I said, because here's the thing, I'll do a video on their printers, but I'm not paying them anything for it, and they will get a fair review. If the printer sucks, which I fully expect it probably will, it's from Tronxy. You know, I'll tell you guys, but, you know, I don't care if someone gives us a printer and we buy it ourselves. I'll tell you this right now, I'm not going to buy a Tronxy printer. If they wanted to send one to us and it's not running GPL violating software, fine, I'll show it off. But I'm not ponying up, money to buy a Tronxy printer that's $800, and then you're only going to give me the refund after I leave a good review. And you're also going to bribe me with an extra $100. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, it's laughable. Like, I'm not spending $800 on a Tronxy and trusting that you're going to refund me. Like, you know, I could return it. Like, if they screwed me over, I could return it. But I don't want to box it back up and disassemble it. Like, it's a full kit, you know. It's way too much work at that point just to get it, do a video, and send it back. Like, I don't like doing that either. You know, regardless of what the company is, I don't like screwing over other companies like that, you know, by renting equipment. But anyways, I just thought it was laughable. I literally told them, send me the printer and I'll do the review. And I'm not buying it. And plus you're going to give people positive reviews, or give them reimbursements on positive reviews only. Like, that's literally against the FTC guidelines and Amazon's policies. But to be completely honest, I don't think Amazon gives a shit about their policies, because I've reported IP cameras that were, I've reported IP cameras that had legitimate security risks, like people from the company in China connecting into them and scanning my network with a telnet session, because I was able to capture that. This was like 5 years ago, before TS3D was even a thing. They wouldn't post the review. I've bought solid state relays off Amazon before I knew better about clones and had them catch fire, and they wouldn't post reviews. I've reported the products that I've gotten that caught on fire that were fakes, reported them as hazardous to Amazon, and they don't take them down. So at this point, with how much, like, I get emails, multiple emails every single day. They're now coming to our support email. They're coming to my personal email and my company emails, begging for positive reviews on Amazon, where you purchase it and they give you the money back over PayPal. So unless it's like a legitimate company, take Amazon reviews with a grain of salt, because these companies have figured out that there are people out there that will leave 5-star reviews just because they got the product for free. So yeah. Amazon doesn't give a shit. They want you to think that they give a shit, but they don't actually give a shit. You know, it's like people who go, well, Amazon's customer service is amazing. Well, no, it's not, because all they do is they're like, fuck off and take your money back if something's broken. They don't actually fix your problem. You know, like, I mean, we could probably, I mean, maybe people want that. I don't know. When we get support requests in for products, we try to fix the customer's issue. We don't just be like, here's your money back, now move along. Yeah. If you guys have ever purchased a printer from Amazon that comes with tech support, try using the tech support. Ask them some basic questions and watch them fumble. I've done that. It was very entertaining. You know, because you got to remember, they're just outsourcing everything to call centers. Basically, they just have, you know, they've got people that are reading scripts that are just running through a actual spreadsheet. The people on Amazon support have no idea what 3D printer parts are or what they do. They're just reading a script. The manufacturer sent them a script, and, you know, especially if it's coming from a Chinese company, I doubt their documentation is good. You know, whereas with us, my guys that do the technical support and the customer service, they're nerds. We hired them from the 3D printing community, so they actually know their shit. So anyways, it is now after 6. It is doggo treat time. So he's already in position. She's passed out. Look at, you can see her snoot. Boop. I'm starting to do, I have started to plan out Home Assistant streams. I have, in our internal wiki, I have some video ideas already typed out and what I'm covering in them. So there will be. I hear you guys. Come here. Come here. Remo, shake. No. Put it in my hand. Touch. Sit. Okay. Good boy. Clara, come here. Come here. Can you sit? Shake. Clara, shake. Speak. Come on, speak. Give me a big one. Oof. Come on, speak. Get out of the way. Speak. Yeah? Can you lay down? Lay down. Good girl. Clara knows more commands than Remo. So, anyways, I will see you guys sometime tomorrow, maybe in the like around noon, because I'm going to work on this and get this out of my office and into the print farm. And yeah, I will be recording doing the lighting downstairs, so that'll be some Home Assistant and other stuff video, and that will be an edited video. I'm not going to do that live. There will be a montage of me assembling, like building the wood frame and everything, getting the LEDs in the channel, doing the wiring. So yeah, it'll be cool. I don't know when it'll be out. Don't ask me. I'm going to record it and then chop it up and edit it. So hope you guys all have a good weekend. Hope you guys learned something. And as always, happy printing.